Welcome back to theCUBE studio here at the New York Stock Exchange. I'm Gemma Allen, and this May, theCUBE and NYSE Wired is going on the road not too far, Midtown Manhattan, where we will be hosting at the AI Agent Summit with Simon Chan and his wonderful team. In advance of that, we're bringing some of the guests and headline speakers and awardees onto theCUBE and NYSE Wired to get a sneak peek at exactly what the story is behind some of these companies. Joining me now is Natan Linder, CEO and co-founder of Tulip. Welcome, Natan.
Thank you for having me, Gemma. It's great to be here.
So your company carries an interesting marketing narrative. You want to keep AI human-centric.
Yes.
At the factory level.
Isn't that refreshing?
It's so refreshing. I have to say, I love this. I love the word human, like I've never loved it before. Talk to me a little about exactly what it is you do and how you aim to achieve that.
So Tulip builds what we call frontline operation platforms. It's a set of tools, including AI agent, workflows, application building tools to help companies who manufacture real products transform the domain expertise, the knowledge of the people who actually build their product, design their production lines, run the machines into digital workflows. And that is a really hard problem to do because software is complex, expensive. Of course, AI and AI in the physical domain changes all that. So these are engineers. These are not necessarily your software engineers, but these are, they could be industrial process engineers, quality, operational excellence engineers, safety, all the folks that make a physical environment, whether it's a factory floor, a warehouse, a laboratory, where physical work happens, make that environment work. And they need access to AI, physical AI, not less than the engineer, the software engineer, the marketer, the trader down here. And that's what Tulip is focused on, bringing that AI to those physical environments.
Fascinating. And your own story, I love the founder story. So you came to the US, studied at MIT, founded this company out of MIT, am I correct?
Yes.
And have been really working on this, possibly from well before we all talked about LLMs and generative AI in our everyday lives.
Absolutely. Actually, so I spent my entire career building complex hardware software products. So I grew up around, a wood shop. So I always loved the physical world. And, when you work on designing and building mobile phones or robots, you end up in factory floors. And it was always fascinating how there's, the best tools, the most digital pipelines when you design a product, but when you get to the production environments, it could be, spreadsheets, papers, systems that are not connected. And that gap was on my mind for a long time. And that led to some of the research we've done at MIT and eventually what we took to build a new platform that treat those same engineers I mentioned before as first-class constituents of the digital stack and kind of change that environment. So, so they're not left behind the, so to speak, knowledge work equation, which is a extremely arrogant term because as soon as you use that term knowledge work and who's a knowledge worker and who's not, what happens? You define who is outside of that equation.
For sure.
And those folks, run production or work that is so critical for our economies.
Absolutely.
And we have to ensure that the technology gets to them and they can continue to be productive.
So I think the market dynamics certainly see this vision, right? You guys have a valuation of 1.3 billion, which is hugely impressive. So congrats. The term physical AI, what that means, we heard Jensen say it at GTC. I know you guys were there. We were there. It has different resonance to different people, right? It's like become somewhat of an umbrella term. People picture different things. We saw robots cartwheeling around GTC, right? Like that might be one person.
So many robots, actually.
So many, right?
And many of them, were doing interesting things like, the tricks, and some of them were carrying stuff. And that's certainly an incarnation of physical AI. And I think another very common one is the self-driving cars. And I think it's really about what type of models and infrastructure is enabling what type of application. So, of course, when you're thinking about training robots, that's very clear. Like, why would AI be a very useful tool for that? Or when you're trying to help a network of cars get from point A to B, right? But those are machines. robots and cars. And I think in the physical world, we'll still have humans.
For sure.
So
running factory lines, right?
For example, or handling the loading dock, or making sure some test in the lab is running. I can go think about an airport or a hotel. Those are also physical environments where people do work. So I think having a focus on human-centric physical AI and using generative AI models that can produce text alongside visual models, and that's the work we've been kind of showing together with NVIDIA in GTC most recently, basically gives a closed feedback loop to the humans who are actually doing the work and their systems.
For sure.
So you can plan work, and then you can see what happened, and you can kind of tell the human in real time, like, hey, here's a deviation, or over there's a security issue or a safety issue, for example. And that's really empowering.
And the humans essentially are behind these KPIs, right? Factories have always been output driven above all else.
If you follow sort of the religion of operation, which is de facto some variant of lean manufacturing, I'm sure you heard the term and the set of terms around agile, Scrum, and all those terms.
Six Sigma.
There are so many variants.
Talk to me about the original use case for Tulip, right? Because if you think about it, there are so many contextual ways in which this is applicable now in the world of AI, right? AI is really changing what it means to define output.
Yeah.
So what was your kind of moment where you thought, oh my God, we need to create this?
The main sort of moment was the people who have the best access to the work and therefore the knowledge are lacking those fresh class tools. So we started from providing no code and low code platform that allows you very quickly to, in a tool that feels like looks like PowerPoint, create real application without any knowledge, without any requirement of software knowledge whatsoever. And operations, like to make it effective for people who are actually running such complex environment, you need on one hand to understand what data is flowing from machines. That's kind of southbound. Northbound, you need to talk to ERPs and other types of systems that run an enterprise. And to be able to help those people do real world application, for example, guiding people through a set of discrete steps, quality audits, training, management of production of what regulation dictates, like creating an electronic batch record if you're making a drug.
Sure.
And I can go on and on. All those things were locked up in legacy, complex, siloed B2B software platforms that kind of put humans in. We have a narrow bandwidth, like in what, as compared to computers. And instead of letting humans do what they're great at, is like using their intuition to solve the real problem. We always used to say, like, the best computer on your shop floor is your human.
For sure.
And so, and I think now with this kind of augmentation that we're all feeling, I'm sure like all of us, you're using whatever it is, like ChatGPT or Claude,
I just
on a daily
research you, Natan.
Yeah, on a daily basis, and that augments your capabilities. And
for sure,
by now you're taking it for not fully for granted because it's still new, but in a couple of years or even less, it's going to be, this is how we do things. Well, can you imagine how industry will be left behind if we don't provide that kind of functionality and ability to act on, in a complex agentic world? And a lot of people talk about this from, oh my God, the robots are taking over and agents are going to run all the things, but this is not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is humans are going to become the orchestrators.
For sure. And also from a change management perspective, the documentation around regulation and sense checks is so hugely important, because if you have folks prompting systems, right, to implement changes, especially in a agentic world where, there's some level of autonomy at the agent end.
Yes.
The actual traceability side of that is huge, right?
You're hitting on a critical point, because we all go through, you can't go through the day without 5 updates that puts you either in FOMO or fear, undoubt, certainty with respect to AI and what's new and what you're doing or not doing. And that moves really fast and becomes the next model and the next thing people adopt. And that's great. And on the other hand, humans biologically evolves slowly. And the laws and regulations we make are slow. And you still need protections and you still need all those things. And to reconcile, the speed of technology and in that transformation, and people used to call this digital transformation, right?
Yeah.
And that's another terrible term.
Many institutional folks still do, right? There's a lot of legacy players that still use that term quite a bit.
But it's meaningless.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no transformation that is not digital.
For sure.
And they're never over. So you with the Tulip perspective, how we think about it from through the lens of continuous transformation.
Yeah.
And so part of what we're doing is like helping those same humans, being able to, if one engineer can do a work controlling one line, if they can orchestrate agents, if they can get the data, if they can do it in an environment where they are trusted to use the tool and they trust the tool the same way a software engineer would trust their cursor driven IDE or Claude Code or whatever they're using, then that same engineer is augmented with superpowers, and now they can run maybe 3 production lines.
Sure.
You know why that's critical? Because we don't have enough people in manufacturing in the United States or in Europe.
Sure, it's a global problem. So talk to me, last question, a little bit about the vision here, especially from the perspective of scale.
Yeah.
Do you envision a world where this is almost like a version of GitHub, what GitHub is for software engineers,
So
for for factory, leaders? Like, what is your view here? Is one blueprint that, iterates based on industry?
Yeah. So first of all, we're already living the dream to a degree. So if you go to Tulip Library, it has those blueprints and it's a community, and there's thousands and thousands of engineers that can actually now share best practices and all the way to context and agent. So content becomes context, and it's shared and it's available. So that's a reality that's happening right now. I don't think those engineers were organized the same way software engineers. So this GitHub point you just made, we are thinking deeply on that point, and I do think that will happen. But I think the data and the horizontal knowledge that we're learning, because Tulip is deployed in, tier 1 pharma manufacturers and luxury good manufacturers and industrial manufacturers, and you're like, what's going on here? And it's manufacturing is manufacturing is manufacturing. The first principles of production systems are not going to change. You're still going to want to manufacture on time, on quality, and so on. So building that into agentic tools and models eventually is certainly part of the vision. Working hard to make it happen, and doing it very, very close to customers, because the tolerance for folks in operations to, hype technology stories over like, how is this solving us a real problem that helps us, get the result we need, whatever it may be, from their perspective is critical. They're not tell us stories type people. It's like show me how it works type people. So that's what we're doing, and and believe that will scale Tulip quite nicely the next few years alongside with our customers. So
love it. I love the fact that also there's an element of human control in the narrative, right? We're not roadkill. We are part of an iteration for our future. So
we are not
a powerful message.
We are not roadkill, and I think that it's a powerful message. I also believe that the flip side is very dangerous, to think that we will just kind of
which is becoming an increasingly looming reality, though, right? On the other side, we hear, if you follow headlines right now, as a knowledge worker or, blue, white collar, there is certainly a lot of fear out there, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of fear. And I think we've heard over the past several years, keep hearing this word, I'm sure, here in this studio, how we need to upskill.
Yeah.
The workforce, and I think AI, and especially human-centric physical AI, like we're doing, is phenomenal technology to help upskill those folks, and we need them. We need them for our economy to stay competitive, and it's almost as if operations manufacturing has a bad rep as an industry, and perhaps there's kind of a silver lining or some bright light here that not a lot of people still see, but I'm an optimist, and like if we're able to pull the people who might not celebrating that, and no stretch of imagination might, some job will be lost to AI in the knowledge work domain, the pure knowledge work domain, but they end up in a new knowledge work domain, which is operations. That's actually winning.
Yeah, it's like moving up on the value curve. Well, to quote Jensen, it's not about doing more with less, it's about doing more with more, right?
It's about doing more with more. Absolutely.
Very interesting story. Look forward to seeing you in May. Thanks so much for coming on
Thank you for
theCUBE,
having
Natan.
me. It's been great. Thanks a lot.
I'm Gemma Allen at theCUBE studio here at the New York Stock Exchange. This is part of our program with NYSE Wired covering the AI Agent Conference. Thanks so much for watching.